All right. Looks like we have some people with us. Thank you everyone for joining so far. Got some people entering. So Susan, if you can turn off that little sound when people enter, I think that's a setting. If you can't, no big deal.
Yeah, I was trying to find it real quick, so I will work on that.
That might be a me thing. Let's see. Close captioning, disable annotations, share computer sound. I think that's me. Oh no, that's not it. Okay, well, that's fine. Should we get started? I think we should get started. There's a good number of people here. All right, everybody, welcome. Thanks for joining us today for our webinar on custom software and what to know before you build. My name is Sarah Miller. I'll be our moderator today, and we're excited to talk to everyone about getting started in custom software and whether or not you're an enterprise looking to add custom products, or a small company or a startup that's trying to build something from scratch. For the first time, we do have some time reserved at the end for everyone for our Q&A. So please submit your questions in the chat as we go throughout our presentation. I know we had a few submitted in advance, but if you submit them in the chat, we'll try to get to as many as we can at the end. And we will get started. So here's our agenda for today. We will be going over, I'll introduce our speakers. We'll talk about, do you need custom software? How to get the most out of your investment in custom software, phases of product development, and then we'll leave a bunch of time for our Q&A at the end. So I'll get started by introducing our speakers. So today we're joined by our CEO and co-founder, Greg Sterndale, one of our software project managers, Angelica Suarez, and our business development manager, Rob Hassler. So to kick us off, I want to ask each of our speakers to tell us a little bit about themselves and their role at Promptworks. So Greg, I'll let you start.
Sure, thanks, Sarah. As Sarah said, I am the CEO and one of the co-founders of Promptworks. Started the company about 9 years ago. I'm a software engineer by trade, and today a lot of what I do is working on strategy for our company and putting together proposals for prospective clients of ours alongside with Rob.
All right, so I'll hop in. Hi, everyone. My name is Angelica Suarez. I'm one of the software project managers here at Promptworks. I've been here for about a year and a half, and some primary responsibilities that I have are working within our development team to make sure that things are moving smoothly, working very closely with clients to make sure that they know what's going on at all times and that they're satisfied and happy with the product that we're building for them. I have had a pretty wide breadth of clients, so everything from brand new startups who are fresh out the gate and looking for funding, all the way up to enterprise level clients like the US Department of Defense and Drexel University here in Philadelphia.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rob Hassler. I am the business development manager here at Promptworks, and I have been with the company for almost 3 years now. So Greg mentioned him and I work together largely in a sales capacity, and I'm responsible for helping our clients take their app or product idea from concept to execution, working alongside folks like Angelica and the rest of our delivery team. And part of that process is helping the client determine what technology they'll use, what approach they would like to take, and the team members from our side who will be involved in the project.
Great, thanks everyone. So we can get right into it. Greg, I'll let you kick us off by introducing ourselves a little bit more and starting our webinar.
Sure, I can give you the elevator pitch of the company. We design and build custom software like mobile applications that you'd install on your phone or cloud-based web applications that you use in a browser. And we do that for our clients. We've built over 100 of them over the past almost 9 years now. And many of the products that we develop use things like machine learning models or talk to IoT devices via Bluetooth, for example. And most all of them that we build integrate with other systems. And I like to say that one of the hardest things that I do in my day-to-day job is challenge our prospective clients' assumptions that they need custom software. And if it turns out that they do, I challenge them to start with a really small scope and to build less upfront. So building these products is hard and risky because they're custom and somebody hasn't built this before. That's why. So in preparation for this meeting, I put together some thoughts about indicators that you may or may not need custom software. So here are a couple ideas. These are 3 things that may indicate that custom software is going to be a good fit for your project. So first one on my list here is your business offering itself. Is this piece of software? If the thing that you're developing is going to be what you're selling, that's a good indicator that it's something that is worth building software for rather than buying something off the shelf, especially if you're looking to develop some intellectual property. Number 2 on my list here, it's a good sign if some established competitors, term we use to describe similar companies, maybe in a different industry, if they are using custom software in their business and they're profitable, it's probably for a good reason. So it's something you should consider as well. And then lastly, of course, if you have used and outgrown, or if you've done a bunch of research and ruled out commercial off-the-shelf software or SaaS options, then you're probably doing something novel or at some kind of a new scale that warrants developing custom software for yourself. And I also put together some thoughts here on the next slide that are indicators that you may not want to consider custom software. So if you're looking at a potential project and you think that the return on your investment in custom software is going to generate less than 6 figures, that's a sign that maybe you don't want to be developing custom software. It's expensive and you want to make sure that you get a good return on your investment. In other words, is the juice worth the squeeze there? And kind of to piggyback on that, for point number 2, if you determine that it is going to have a good return, but you don't have 6 figures on hand to invest in it, I'd advise waiting until you have sufficient capital to make that investment. What I wouldn't want to see is somebody investing all of the capital that they have on hand and building half of a product that they're not going to be able to generate revenue or a return. And the third indicator here is if there are alternatives to custom software that exist in the market that will support a profitable business model for you. If they're there and you don't need to demonstrate some kind of hockey stick growth over the next couple of years and you can be profitable without custom software, you should consider using something that's off the shelf or a SaaS solution.
Great.
Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Greg. I'll pass this off to Rob on how to get the most out of your investment in product development.
Sure. Thanks, Sarah. So similar to what Greg was saying, the notion of building custom software, building custom applications also comes with a considerable amount of time, effort, and expenditure. And so when you have decided, or if you're thinking about deciding to build custom software, it's helpful to kind of take a step back and think about what you need to do as an entrepreneur or alongside your team to position yourself to be able to actually start to spend that capital on building the right product. As Greg mentioned, for us, the first step with any of our clients is to evaluate their need and whether or not there's a simpler solution to their problem than perhaps creating a fully custom application. It's not in our client's interest, nor is it in our interest to build something that already exists, or even worse, something that doesn't ultimately fulfill the needs of your customers. So one thing that we always do, and I do this a lot when I'm talking to early stage entrepreneurs, is suggesting to take a step back and examining the goals that need to be accomplished with a custom application, what requirements perhaps are non-negotiable, and what can realistically be done within a specific budget that you and your team have. So I put together 3 steps here, or things to consider, that I thought would be really helpful for people when they're first thinking about embarking on building custom software. So the first thing here is winnowing down your concept. So when you decide to start a business, whatever that business is, you may have a million different great ideas for your product, but one of the hardest parts is winnowing down those ideas to your core concept, to whatever the smallest possible thing you can start with is. So before you ever implement software, and Angelica is going to talk a little bit about some product strategy stuff later on, you'll want to do the work alongside your team or yourself to make sure that you're building a product that people actually find valuable, right? And so that requires a really deep understanding of things like the user and what they hope to get out of it, what their motivations are. All of this is steps to take before you're operating off of untested assumptions. The bottom line here, when I talk to our clients early on in the process, is anyone can build a product, but not everyone can build products that solve a real problem and or are solving for a specific product market fit. So once you've done some of that product market fit type of work, then you want to start thinking about your MVP. And if people have heard the term MVP or it's new to them, that stands for minimum viable product. And that is really the smallest thing that someone will pay for. And what you want to try to do is get a handful of paying customers on your MVP, and then use that revenue for which you can finance further development as your product grows. So number 2 here that I thought was important to mention is finding the lowest cost solution when you start out, right? So Greg mentioned this a little bit in terms of off the shelf or existing platforms. Are there things that you can put together for your MVP that might not necessarily require something fully customizable? Or have you done some of that legwork to know that you actually do need something that's entirely new? So when you're building your MVP, you want to be cognizant of the fact that your priorities, things like business objectives, all of those things could change as you learn from testing that you're receiving in that MVP phase. And so you also want to make sure here, and this is really important, that you don't overbuild or overspend in that first MVP stage. And then finally, might seem obvious, but it's really important and is dependent on the type of business that you're looking to build, as well as the necessary product fit. And that's determining what kind of app you need, right? So when you're building custom software, you'll need to determine if you need a combination of a web and mobile application. Maybe it's just one of those things. And then if it's a mobile app, does it need to be native, right? Or can it be cross-platform? All of these things you'll need to consider in terms of what features are going into the application, how much capital you have to spend, and what your customers are really looking for in their experience. So jumping ahead, once you have a sense of what you're going to build, what capital you need, you obviously need a really good team to work alongside you, and a team that's a fit for your business. So first, you'll want to decide, do you need a team? What type of team do you need? Do you need a team that is helping you build a product from the ground up? and you need, multiple engineers, a designer, and someone to help you manage that project? Or do you need something like staff augmentation? Perhaps you have your own engineering team with a specific skill set and you just need someone to embed within that team. Other things to consider, and I have encountered this fairly often with talking to entrepreneurs, is do you want a team that will help you build your application but wants a percentage of equity? Or do you just want to work with a team where you're paying to build the application and then you're maintaining it on your own after the engagement ends? Other things to consider are making sure that your team has the appropriate skill set. It's also really helpful to have team members on your dev team who have perhaps worked in a similar industry or have that industry experience. And then finally, again, Angelica will talk a little bit about this, but you want to make sure that your team is following best practices in terms of development processes, like test-driven development, things like continuous integration and regular sprint reviews. The last thing I'll mention before handing the mic off is, when you're talking to a development team, you should be asking them challenging questions. It's a two-way street, and you want to make sure that you're also doing your due diligence to make sure that it's the right partner for you and the rest of your team.
Awesome. Thanks, Rob. All right, I'll pass this to Angelica to talk about product development.
All right. Hey, everyone. Okay, so now that you know you need custom software for your business solution and you've thought about how to get the most out of your investment, it's time to start taking a look at what comes next, and I'll give you a peek at what that's going to look like. So product development happens in 3 phases. There's going to be a discovery, an implementation, and a launch. We're going to review each one of those over the next few slides, but just as a quick overview, discovery is the first step, and it helps us determine what we're building. It can often range from 2 to 8 weeks. Implementation is the bulk of your engagement time with your development partner, and it includes things like planning for what you're going to build, detailed designs for user experience and user interface, your software development process, testing and QA, and your deployments. And then lastly, your new product is going to get launched, and there are a few supporting activities that come along with a handoff like that. So let's look at each one of those phases, and we'll start from the beginning. So phase 1, we're looking at discovery for product strategy. So product strategy basically helps us define the features that are going to create adoption and loyalty. So getting people to actually use your app and want to keep using your app. Product strategy helps us to take a look at your ideas. We look at the lessons and the gaps from your competitors and things that we could learn from those who are already in the space, as well as who your customers are going to be. And then product strategy also helps us align on objective measures to prioritize an MVP. All right, so why do we do product strategy? We do it to help with your product adoption. The 3 steps that we do for that are first defining the problem. So as Greg has mentioned, as Rob has mentioned, we really want to make sure we're helping you build a product that's going to be successful. And part of that is, are you solving a problem that people need solved? Once we have an idea of what your problem is that you're going to be solving, we'll ideate on opportunities to solve that problem. Think about the things that might need to happen in order to solve it. And then once we have all of those ideas, we'll define that solution. So we want to make sure that we are encouraging your customers to adopt the product and fulfill your business needs. And the solution is going to help with both of those things. So all in all, essentially, we just want to make sure we're building you the right product for your business and for your users so that it gets used and it's successful. Okay, so when you're doing a discovery to create a great product strategy, there are a lot of different activities that you can do with your development team to facilitate that. Your development team should partner with you to put together an assortment of discovery activities based on your unique business needs. And I've listed a bunch of them here. But the number and type of activities that you'll do is going to depend on a lot of different things. So one could be the current state of your product. Is it just a concept right now and we're going to build it from scratch? Or is it something that already exists and we just need to work on and iterate on? Have you done any of these activities before or on your own? Because that might help inform areas of interest for future research. Another thing that could, weigh in on that is what you're hoping to achieve by the end of your engagement with your development partner. All these types of questions will help your development partner put together a list of discovery activities so that you can create a good product strategy. All right, so I wanted to share this case study with you because leverage is a really good example of why you need a discovery and the value that you get from taking the time to develop your product strategy. So as a little bit of background, Leverage is the parent company of Revel Ride. Revel Ride is an indoor cycling company and they offer classes here in Philadelphia. So Leverage recognized that they had a need in their organization to streamline all of their different tools that they used to run their business. They were using separate tools for class scheduling, another tool for billing, just a lot of different tools across their business. And they wanted one custom platform that their user segments could want to use and do all of their jobs all in one place. They weren't ready to actually start building a piece of custom software yet because they weren't sure what they needed to build. And so for that, they reached out to Promptworks, and our entire engagement together was focused on doing a discovery to help them develop their product strategy. So the first thing we had to do was get to know their different user segments, their studio owners, their instructors, their riders. And through observation of how they were working and direct interviews with them one-on-one, we learned how each user segment was currently performing all of their jobs across multiple tools and what they wanted from a new app that would make their jobs easier. So these kinds of gaps that we identified in what they need but didn't have yet, we call those switch-worthy features. These are the things that are going to encourage a customer, encourage a user to want to stop the thing that they're already familiar with and come along with you for your app. And support you. So we want to make sure we identify those real golden nuggets of things that are going to help with adoption. So we identified those switch-worthy features through that discovery process. And from there, we were able to do things like develop user journeys. We were able to create app flows and wireframes. And ultimately, we did create a clickable prototype for them. And it showed them that they have a cohesive app, one cohesive app that all of their users could use. And we know that it's going to be successful because the way that we built it was based on what those users were telling us they wanted. So as a result, even though Leverage hasn't built their software app yet, they're ready to do so, and they can do it with a pretty high degree of confidence that it's going to be adopted once they create it. So just wanted to share that case study, a really good example of why it's important to consider your product strategy and do those activities. All right, so once you have your product strategy, you're going to move on to phase 2, and that's implementation. This is what most people are thinking of when they're thinking of building an app. So now that everyone knows what they want to build, it's important to pick the right tools to build it. A tip that I'd love to pass on is that when you're looking for your development partner, be conscious of choosing one that is going to be relatively agnostic to their tooling and not one that's particularly attached to any certain framework or language or anything about their tech stack. Your product is unique, your business is unique, and so it's really important your development partner can assemble the right tech stack for your unique business need. And so it's great to find someone who's a little bit more agnostic and who can have skills across those multiple frameworks and languages and make those decisions.
I'm afraid she's frozen. We can give her a minute.
I'm actually right down the hall. I'll go check that.
Yeah, they're both in the office, so they can just join the same room. Greg, will Angelica be joining us?
Watch this.
Oh, wow.
All right.
Benefits of working in real life.
Yes, for sure. Okay, so even the very best software development companies will hit a technical challenge once in a while. So I'm not sure exactly where we left off, Sarah. Did you guys hear me through that last slide?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we're
Okay,
just,
great.
yeah.
Fabulous. So the show will go on. All right. So we talked about tooling and why it's important to find a development team that can work across a lot of tech stacks so that they can help you find the right tools for your project. Now let's talk about the way in which they're going to work. So another tip that I would really advise towards is to find a development team that practices agile development. And I really want to make sure I explain why this is so important so that it's a good takeaway for you. But agile development is really important because it encourages you to keep tighter feedback loops with your development team. And it also gives you more flexibility to make changes as you go along. So, in contrast, you've probably heard of a waterfall type of product development or product management strategy. And in waterfall, you're going to do a lot of requirements up front. Your team's going to go away for a while, and then you're not really going to see your product or get any feedback about it until close to the end. In agile development, you're going to do things in a tighter feedback loop. So you're going to review and plan together frequently. You're going to build and deploy incrementally so that you're seeing those things bit by bit. You'll respond to customer needs faster because if you have customers who are giving you that feedback, you'll have the opportunity to receive it more often. Agile development also advocates for testing and QA along the way. And then another great benefit to you as a client is that you get to review your scope and your budget and your timeline really often so that you always know where your project is. I also want to note there are a lot of ways to do agile development. So agile is an umbrella term. You may have heard of Scrum, Kanban, extreme programming. There are dozens and dozens of ways to perform agile development. You'll probably find that Scrum is the most common framework that you'll find in the industry. At Promptworks, we do use an adaptation of Scrum, and we typically work on a 2-week sprint cadence. So that means everything you're seeing on the right here, all of the strategy and planning, the design, the development, testing, and getting feedback, that happens on a 2-week loop so that we're getting those tight feedback loops that you want. All right, another quick case study that would be great to share with you all. So I wanted to talk to you about Nico. So Nico wanted to create an app for a neighborhood real estate and investment trust. Basically an app that helps individuals financially invest in their neighborhoods without having to buy property on their own. The challenge for Nico is that when you're building an app in a financial domain like this, there are a lot of security requirements and a lot of regulatory requirements because you're dealing with things like bank account verifications, users' privacy needs, payment integrations, all stuff that, as I'm sure you can imagine, or if you've worked with before, have a lot of regulation around them. Nico also had a lot of ideas for features they wanted in the app, but they didn't have a clear sense of prioritization yet when they came to Promptworks. So the result of the project, jumping ahead, is that it was successful. Local residents and non-local investors are buying shares in the real estate investment trust holdings. And one of the reasons this project was successful was because of our agile approach to development. So that's why I wanted to bring this one up for you guys. We approached the project using a Scrum framework. Like I mentioned, that means we're performing a set of cadence activities every 2 weeks that help us stay on track. Throughout that 2-week sprint cadence, we had opportunities to refine the backlog together. We made sure we understood all of those security and regulatory requirements. We prioritized features. We planned for which ones would be part of their MVP and which ones would not. We had those tight feedback loops that made sure the product is what Nico envisioned. And the most important part of all is that we were able to pivot our strategy and adjust our plans when necessary, because as we discovered more regulatory requirements, we had to adjust along the way. And so having that agile process in place really helped us make sure that we were building the correct product, to regulation, and we did it in a pretty quick amount of time. All right, launch and handoff. This is the fun bit. Okay, so there are three steps you can kind of think about when you're planning for a launch. The first is going to be preparations. So while your delivery team should be testing and doing QA all throughout the way, they'll probably also want to do a final round of QA before launch. So that's things like functional testing to make sure that your features are functioning as expected, UX and UI testing to ensure that the user experience and interface is presenting as intended, and accessibility testing. You want your app to abide by best practices for accessibility. Depending on the complexity of your app's deployment process, your delivery team may also want to mock a deploy, something that we call a dry run. And then assuming your product requires some form of administration, a great service for your development team to provide would be to sit with you while you practice your workflows within the app, to make sure that you're feeling confident and ready to go when it's time to go live. All right, and then step 2 is launch. So launch itself can sometimes seem a little bit underwhelming in the moment. Most of them take just a few minutes. A couple can take up to a couple of hours, but it's often quite quick. The fun part is post-launch. This is when you're seeing your product live in the market, you're popping your confetti, you're calling your friends and family, telling them to check it out. While you're popping your confetti and calling your friends, your development team is going to be monitoring the app, standing by, making sure that you've had a successful and stable launch. Okay, your product is launched. Now what? How do you follow that up? So the way that you're going to wrap up an engagement is with a handoff of your product. Your development team should be handing off things like all UX diagrams and prototypes, UI style guides, clean and well-documented code base, any automated unit tests that come along with that, and any API documentation, as necessary. There are a couple of other things that a development team may help you with in the handoff process, and I can speak to those a little bit. So your team may also help you with staffing assistance. I know at Promptworks, we do often help our clients hire and onboard their own in-house team members. A lot of clients like to take us up on that offer because it's helpful for the transition to have people who built the app onboard the people who will maintain the app going forward. And also just, for our expertise that we've developed around the product and the domain. Something else that your delivery team may help with is a maintenance approach. So after you launch, it's helpful to have a delivery team still kind of on hand to provide consistent teams to smooth out spikes of work. So say something comes up in, the week after your launch, it's great to have someone nearby who can help with that in a pinch. So those are a couple of the other services that your team may provide during handoff. All right, so we went through a lot of stuff. Just to kind of summarize all of the things that you need to know before you embark on building custom software. You want to define your problem and winnow down your concept so that you have clear direction to move forward. You're going to choose your delivery team based on your product and your business needs, keeping in mind, again, the importance of a team that operates with tight feedback loops so that you always know what's going on. You'll do some discovery of your product strategy so that you can feel confident you're building the right thing at the right time. And once your product is in development, you're going to stay in touch with your team to provide frequent feedback on the product and to plan for your next steps going forward together. Lastly, you'll launch your product and you'll receive your handoff materials. So I'm going to pass this off back to Sarah for Q&A. I hope this was a helpful overview.
Awesome. Thanks, Angelica. Appreciate it. Glad that you and Greg could join forces in our office. That's really lucky. So yeah, and if you both want to join back in for our Q&A, I will ask Greg if you can mute your Slack. That would be extremely helpful, just so that we're not getting all those dings during the rest of our Q&A. But thank you, everyone, for attending. Thank you, Rob, Angelica, Greg, for speaking today. Jumping into the Q&A, we do have a couple of questions that were submitted before our talk. So I'll hop onto some of those as we wait for some more questions to come into the chat, but we'd love your questions. And if we don't get to your question today, don't worry, we can follow up with you one-on-one after this and chat with you individually if you're interested. Otherwise, we will get started. So I think we can get started with a question for Greg. How to prepare your in-house team or your staff for innovation, or how to advocate for innovation internally within your team?
Sure. I would say one of the first things you want to do with your in-house team, I'm assuming this is a question about a team that's going to be doing all the product development work themselves within the organization. I would make sure that the roles and responsibilities are clear throughout the team or amongst the team. I think it was Rob that shared a slide earlier of the different roles that we have here at Promptworks. I would encourage folks to have similar ones. It's okay if you have a small team and people wear multiple hats, but being explicit about that up front, I think is really helpful. Another thing I think that's going to help for teams, especially if they're new teams, new to working together, is to be clear and explicit about the process that you're going to follow. Angelica did a wonderful job laying out how we do things here. Not everybody does it that way. Certainly don't have to, but agreeing as a team to a process, I think, is important. Another thing here that I don't think Angelica mentioned that we use regularly are working agreements with our team that capture some of the nuance just kind of down on paper so that everybody has it for reference. Maybe if team members need to rotate in and out over time, you can reference that working agreement and say, oh, okay, on this product development team, we're working on 2-week sprints, and we do retros on Tuesdays, and code reviews need to be done by 2 other software engineers before they're merged back into master, for example. Those are some things that are great to agree upon ahead of time. So does that help answer the question? Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah, and I'll add on another one just as you're going, kind of related to that. What can a company leader prepare before approaching a professional developer like someone like Promptworks?
Okay. I'm going to assume by company leader here, we're kind of talking about the person who's going to be the product owner.
Yeah.
Maybe in a larger company, they may not necessarily be the leader of the company, but maybe of the initiative. And I think one of the most important things here that makes my job personally, and I think Rob's job easiest, is when somebody comes to us with a well-articulated, clearly defined problem that they're solving and what they think the solution is going to be. And it's okay if that's not perfect, if that changes over time, or if they're looking to us to fill in some gaps, totally fine. But having that well-articulated is wonderful. If they can cite competitors or comparators, that's also very helpful. If somebody who is coming to us and talking about a complex system that needs to integrate with another one, being able to show us information about the systems that it's going to integrate with is also very helpful and makes our job in putting together proposals or estimating level of effort a lot easier. So those are some things that you can do. And other things that are also helpful is doing some research on your own, talking with prospective users, and sharing the results of that research and analysis with us too. It's less work for us to do.
Cool. Does anyone have anything to add to that? Rob, anything?
I think Greg mostly covered it. I mean, when you're, one thing I'll add, again, maybe it seems obvious, is just thinking about the capital that you're looking to spend. Oftentimes, one of the hardest things about putting a cost to custom software is that it's hard to have a granular sense of what that number is when you're looking at sort of, the 10,000 foot view. But especially for early stage companies or companies that, are bootstrapping a project, it's really helpful when you're talking to a development team to give some sense of maybe what that ceiling of expenditure is that you're looking to put towards whatever software is you're looking to build. The reason that that's important is, if you have $200,000 that you're looking to spend, great. Your options might be more wide ranging. But if you have $60,000 that you're looking to spend, that will give your development partner a sense of, what are perhaps some creative ways to incrementally get you to where you need to be, given the amount of money that you have raised.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks for that. We have a question here about discovery. Someone's asked, can I do discovery on my own? By discovery, we also mean product strategy work. I'll punt that to the group.
I can just shed some insights on that. Also, cheers if other people are drinking a beer. I noticed that I'm the only one on camera. So if you are enjoying a happy hour beverage, I'm enjoying a Love City IPA. So cheers to the group. The thing I'll say about discovery or product strategy, we highlighted a little bit of that in our talk, where I think I specifically was talking about product market fit. There are aspects of the product strategy phase that are, I would say, pre-engaging with a company like Promptworks. And some of that might be doing a little bit of financial modeling, right? So you have a vision for your product, and let's say, it's a SaaS product that you're going to charge users for. What is your potential expenditure on building custom software, and how does that equate to the number of users you need to have that be rational, right? And some of those things I think are very reasonable to do before engaging with a development partner. However, I think from a cost factoration standpoint, what you want to think about is how much of that work are you looking to rely on an expert to help you facilitate and actually, most likely bring that cost down long term by doing some of that work alongside your team. So, oftentimes there are people who are on the fence perhaps about doing some user research. And we sort of, give them the examples that Angelica talked through, and we do, a week or two of user research, and the things that we learn from that collectively end up saving, perhaps tens of thousands of dollars where you might go develop software or features that your users actually don't want. So I think the short answer there is there's a balance, testing certain hypotheses around what the core problem is that you're going to solve are, I would say, pre-product strategy perhaps, but working with a team who has done, has a proven process and has done it time and time again for some of those key items that will make your product successful, I think are worth considering when you're talking to a development partner.
Awesome. Cool. Angelica, anything else? We can move on to the next question.
I think Rob did a really great job covering that. I'll leave that there.
Cool. We have a question from the chat. If a startup has a bootstrapped MVP in use, do you typically trash it or start the build from zero?
Good question. It totally depends. If you can build on top of it, in the software world, we call that extensibility. If you can build on top of it, there's no reason to throw it away. And so I would not advise that. Usually with an engagement like that, we would do an audit of sorts, see where there might be some tech debt in the existing software, and evaluate whether the time it's going to take to plug holes would outweigh the time it would take to start with a greenfield brand new app.
Gotcha.
I think one addition to that too is MVP. I think we're thinking about it very much so as the technical component. There might be, to sort of play devil's advocate to Greg, there might be business reasons why you would throw out an MVP. So if you are putting together a fairly simple duct tape version of something just to get users interested and do some testing, But out of that, you learn that, oh, this other thing that I wasn't necessarily thinking of as my core business strategy is actually what my users are really interested in. Perhaps there's a reason there to sort of throw away the technology, but utilize your learnings from a business sense to help guide you as to what the next iteration of a new MVP might look like.
Yeah.
Yeah, to add a little bit more there too, to what Rob is saying, we've definitely seen it before where, a client will come to us with a product that they've had in existence for a while. And, they tried all these different things, they had all these different features, but now they're kind of shifting. They've taken those learnings and they'd like to adjust their business model and move a little bit differently. And when that happens, as Greg was saying, it's important to kind of take an audit of the app that's in existence, because another factor here besides technical debt is the cost of maintenance. And so if you have a lot of features and a lot of code already built in that you don't even really need for this next step of your business, just because you don't need it doesn't mean your development team doesn't need to maintain it and take care of it. And so that's another factor that, it can weigh into that decision of how big is your code base, how much have you already developed, and how much of that are you actually going to be using versus paying your team to just kind of, make sure it's okay, but you're not even going to use it. So you have to consider that maintenance cost as well.
Yeah. Speaking of maintenance, I guess, Angelica, we have a question. How often does custom software have to be updated? I guess that kind of correlates with how does maintenance work?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the funny thing about software is that if you ever stop working on it, it's already dead. A lot of things need to be maintained with software, not just custom software, by the way, but like, anytime you're using software, depends on a few different factors. What are you integrated with and how often does that integration change? If our app is, integrated with an API from another source and they change their API semi-regularly, you would hope that would not happen. But if it does, then that affects how often you need to maintain your software as well. Some other things besides integrations could just be dependencies in your frameworks or, in the code that you're using. A lot of software is kind of more of a living organism than people realize. And so as other software updates, your software needs to update with it so that it doesn't break. So I know that's a little bit of a roundabout response, but those are a couple of the things that would affect how often you need to maintain your product.
Cool. Another question here. What stage of the process is the most difficult or tricky to navigate? Might be more of an opinion question.
For me, it's often the product strategy piece, because that's where we're really asking the clients the big questions of like it's kind of an existential crisis at times. Like, what do you want your business to be? Like, what are your goals? And sometimes it can be kind of challenging for clients to have those answers, and that's 100% okay. That's why we go through this process. But because those decisions are, changing or developing throughout time, sometimes the discovery process and, developing a really good product strategy can feel at times a little bit tricky to navigate, but you will get there. It just takes a little bit of patience and, a good dose of collaboration with your partner.
Cool. Anyone else?
That's a great answer.
Yeah. I would say, the only challenge to that perhaps is the winnowing down of your idea. And so even getting to the point of deciding that you're finally ready to build custom software is like, of all, you might have a million ideas about your business, but which idea are you going to focus on, and how are you going to get to that narrow lens of deciding that this is what your product is going to be, and this is what your users want. So oftentimes when you get to implementation, we've collectively done that legwork that it's fairly heads down, and we can pivot as we need to in terms of adding features that were learning from our customers that are important. But once that process starts, you're underway. So kind of doing, I like the metaphor of cooking, where you're sharpening your knife for 5 minutes before you get in the kitchen to cook for an hour. You need that sharp knife. So I would say the pre sort of product strategy phase is also very important for people who are looking to build a business for the first time.
I thought of one other example while you were talking, Rob, that often appears either right before we do some product strategy or the beginning of it. This happens with typically larger companies with a bigger team, and not everybody on the team is on the same page about what it is that they're going to build, and trying to get all the stakeholders on board and get all the priorities straight. It can be a real challenge. I think what you were describing, Rob, sounded more like doing that, one person doing that internally in their own head is hard enough. And when you're doing it with multiple parties, multiple stakeholders, it can be even more challenging in a big company with maybe even big company politics.
That's a great point.
Yeah, great. I have a question for Greg. Does your team specialize in certain types of custom software?
Yeah, Promptworks, we do primarily native mobile application development and cloud-based web applications. So the native mobile means a piece of software that you can install from the App Store on your phone or a tablet. And kind of the cloud-based web application, that's a piece of software that runs in the browser. Thing that we don't specialize in is software that runs on devices. We don't do that here. We partner with other companies that do that. And there are a handful of programming languages that we use, and we choose basically the right language for a given project. And that things that influence that are certainly whether it's a native mobile app or a cloud-based web app, but also considering what open source libraries exist in a given language that we could take advantage of that help solve some of the problems in that project. Other things to consider there when choosing a language are, is our client going to be taking over ownership of this product at some point, and will they have to hire a team of engineers, or do they have one? So what is their expertise? So you wouldn't want to choose kind of an esoteric programming language to solve a problem that a client's going to have to take over at some point and try and hire somebody that is experienced in that. That can be really hard or expensive. So those are the kinds of things that we try and factor in.
Awesome. All right. I think those are all the questions we have for now. I know we only have 5 more minutes. Does anyone have anything to add before we wrap up? Are we good? Cool. All right. So that wraps it up. Thank you, everyone, for attending today. Thanks again to Rob, Angelica, Greg for speaking. What comes next is if you'd like to speak to us more about what you heard today or have any questions that you'd love to get answered one-on-one, we'd love to hear from you. I've left on this slide my personal email and phone number, so you can feel free to call me or email me, and we'd be happy to continue the conversation. We also have another webinar coming up. We have a webinar on healthcare coming up in the beginning of November that we'll release the details for soon. We have our last webinar, which was on machine learning. If you like what you heard today and want to learn more about machine learning, we have that recorded on our YouTube channel. And we have a few blogs that, one that Rob wrote, giving more detail on how much does it actually cost to build an app. So if you're interested in any of those, I'd be happy to forward those along. You can find most of them on our website. Otherwise, thank you everyone for joining, and cheers for happy hour. All right, thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.